I don't remember ever applying for a job with this company. The name of the office is Halcyon Dynamics. The address is in a small town called Greybridge, which isn't even on Google Maps. But the invitation was official. There was a letterhead and a digital signature. The email was also sent to my work account. I thought, well, probably through a headhunter. I drove myself to town. The roads were empty, but the weather was fine. There were no suspicious signs. Until I finally entered the Greybridge area. Everything immediately felt different. The sun was high, but the shadows cast by the buildings never shifted. Cars were parked neatly along the side of the road. But no one was driving. I passed the city park. The swings moved slowly. But there were no children. No birdsong. Everything was too clean. Too quiet. When I stopped at the intersection to check the map, my cell phone couldn't get a signal. I continued walking until I found the office building, which matched the address. 3-story glass building, no name on it. Just a small sign on the front of the door, Halcyon Dynamics. The door automatically opened by itself. I was immediately greeted by the gentle voice of the receptionist. "Welcome, sir. We've been expecting you. Please go directly to the second floor. The interview room is ready." I nodded. But inside, I was confused. I hadn't told him my name yet. The elevator ascended slowly, and there was only one button inside. When we arrived, the second floor was deserted. But very tidy. The desks were clean. The lights were all on. And every computer displayed the same digital clock, 11:59. Not an analog clock or a digital clock. And everything never changed. I walked to the interview room. Inside, there was one man sitting behind a glass table. His smile is friendly. But his eyes were empty. Not empty horror, more like has no focus. I'm looking, but it's like I'm not really looking. "Please, have a seat. Let's get started, shall we? We're so glad you're finally here." I sat down. He opened the folder, looked at the data, and began asking standard work questions. I answered simply. But as time went on, the strangest things became more and more common. For example, he mentioned my mother's name, even though it wasn't on my resume. He knew what elementary school I went to. And when he asked, "Do you still remember what happened on Friday, at 11:59 p.m., when you were 12 years old?" I was silent. I felt goosebumps. That was when I had a minor accident, falling down the stairs. No one ever knew about it. I started to get suspicious and got up from my chair. I wanted to leave. But the men just said quietly, "If you leave now, the clock will stop for you too." I immediately left the interview room. Run to the elevator. The elevator remains open. I get in. I press the button for the first floor, but there's no button. Only the button for number 2, which I already pressed. I run to the emergency stairs. I go down 2 floors. But when I opened the door to the ground floor, I went back to the second floor. I don't understand. This building scares me. This city holds me. And time. Not moving. The digital clock on the office wall, on the computer screen, even my watch. They were all stuck at 11:59. It had been over 40 minutes. And I started to realize, maybe the email was never sent. But I was called. Not to work, but to stay. I started to waver. My breathing was uneven. I stood in the middle of the long hallway, listening to a small voice from the end. Not footsteps, but a sound like an analog clock. The hands keep jumping, but they don't move forward. I walked toward the source of the sound. It was coming from inside the server room. It was freezing cold inside. The servers were lined up, running. But no one was there. On the wall of the room, there was a large clock. Roman numerals. White. The hands moved back and forth. Only between 11 and 12. It was like something was holding back time, preventing it from ever reaching midnight. I stood there for a long time. Think hard. Until finally I realized, this is not the place to be tested, but detained. Frozen. I wasn't trapped. I was put here because of something I chose. I ran out of the room, walked towards the exit of the building. And when I pulled the door, it worked. The door opened wide. I immediately came out with a sigh of relief, but when I crossed the street to get back to the car, the road had changed. It was asphalt. Now it's rocky ground. The shops were gone. I looked around. Now there were only old houses on either side of the road. Wooden planks. Frosted glass. And all the houses faced the center of the road, facing me. On one of the porches stood an old man. He sat quietly, his eyes lowered. As I passed, he opened his mouth slowly. If you still remember the time, that means you can't stay yet. I'm walking faster. But the feeling got stronger. Not, I'm wanted. Not, I'm being watched. But it's like, this city has decided that I have to come back. And at the end of the road, I found a car. It wasn't mine. But it was running. The engine was running. The key was hanging. And on the dashboard, a digital clock ticking away. The car started. The machine vibrates softly. It's been a long time since I felt this normal. Without thinking, I got in, locked the door, and stepped on the gas. The road ahead was deserted. No signs. No lights. Just one long, straight road with no branches. And on the dashboard, the digital clock was still running. And that was the only time in the entire city that was moving. I pressed the accelerator harder. Something inside me said, before that clock hits 12 o'clock, you have to get out. I didn't know what would happen if that clock passed. But everyone in that city seemed to live solely to avoid that moment. A few minutes into the walk, fog began to descend. The road grew dark. But in the distance, I could see lights. Like an exit gate. Or a checkpoint. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't a police post, but a tall iron bar. The writing was faint. Time here belongs only to those who choose. I braked slowly. In front of the barrier stood an elderly man. He was wearing a neat suit and holding a note in his hand. He walked slowly to my window and knocked on the glass. I opened it a little. He looked into my eyes, then said, "You remember everything?" I answered, "Yes." That means you still have a burden." Me, what do you mean? Most who arrive here want to forget. They want time to stop because life is too hard. But you don't want to let go yet. The men gave her two choices. He said, "If you keep going, you'll remember everything, including the things you wanted to run away from. If you turn around, you can stay. Don't worry. But you won't remember who you are." I remember why I drove to this city in the first place. Not because of an interview invitation, but because I just lost someone, and my head can't accept the reality. I didn't come to Greybridge because of a call to work, but because my brain is not ready to deal with that feeling of loss in the real world. It all started to make sense. This city wasn't a place. This was a stopping point before humanity gave up completely. The barrier opened slowly. The old man stepped back and gave a small nod. My car broke through the fog, and within seconds, I felt the cold disappear. The air began to smell again. The sky had color, and the digital clock read 12 o'clock. I stopped at the first gas station I came across. I asked the attendant where it was, and he replied, "Sir, this is outside Greybridge, about 40 kilometers north. The town has been closed since 2011. No one lives there." I kept quiet. I opened my phone. Full signal. Normal hours. But there's no proof I ever received an interview invitation. There's no record of my trip to Greybridge. There's no proof I ever went there. Except for one thing. The digital clock on the car dashboard. It's still stuck at 11:59. And it can't be changed.